Andrea Smith from North Point ESC, and she is going to be sharing with you information about youth science and business advisory. So welcome, Andrea. Thank you for joining us. Would you like to share your screen this morning?
Thank you, Lisa. That would be great if I'm able to do so.
All right, give me a second to make you a co-host. You are now a co-host, so I will stop sharing. And that should be able to let you share.
That is doing it. Perfect. Perfect. So good morning, everyone. I put together a presentation, and I want to talk a little bit about what we have done in our region since we started our Business Advisory Council in 2018, but I also want to be very responsive to questions. So please don't hesitate to stop me if there's a question or ask those. And then Lisa, can you monitor that chat for me too, and just break in if there's a question that somebody doesn't want to ask as I'm going through. So if you're not aware, North Point ESC, we are to the east of most of you. Our ESC covers Erie, Huron, Ottawa, and Sandusky counties. We have 27 members that belong in our service region. And when we started our Business Advisory Council in 2018, all of the members of our service region chose to join our Business Advisory Council and make it a regional collaborative. Over the past 4 years, we've worked very hard on our plan and our goals and our strategies. We do a lot with our metrics and keeping track of our work, and we've been able to demonstrate growth. And we were recognized last year as a 4-star Business Advisory Council. This is just a snapshot of our work from last year. And so all of our 4 big areas where we were capturing our impact, we made increases over the previous year. We do have several community schools and private schools that also belong to our Business Advisory Council. It's not just our publics who are required to do so. So youth science has been an important part of our journey. In 2018, when we started, we had 3 districts in our region that were piloting the tool at their high school level. And we had just a handful of career coaches in a few of our districts at that time. And as an ESC, we have networks for all kinds of positions. And so we had a network for those career coaches, and we learned what they were doing. I became exposed to youth science. And so we started sharing that across our region. Because there is so much power to that youth science tool. And so over the course of our years, we have grown. We are up to 26 districts in our Business Advisory Council that now use the career discovery tool at the high school level. What we have been able to do, and I realize this is a lot of information all on one sheet, so I will just try to explain it to you briefly. We've been able to capture the information that youth science gives us. So what you are looking at is you are looking at just one of our counties. We have this broken down for all 4 of our counties. We ran the career cluster report that youth science has available. And what this tells us is based on the 16 industry recognized career clusters, how many students we have sitting in our high schools that have taken the assessment that are showing aptitude for each of those clusters. On the 3rd column to the left, we have an idea, or we know how many students show an interest in those career clusters. And then we have a ratio. So what's fascinating is across our 4 counties, we have a very, very similar trend. The same career clusters with a big disparity between aptitude and interest show up at the top, because we have this one in ranked order for you. So you can see in our high schools across the county, we have close to 650 students that show aptitude to be good in a career field related to computer and technology. but based on their interest responses or the things they've been exposed to, only about 100 of those students are reporting that may be of interest to them. So we have 6 times as much talent as we have interest. Same with manufacturing. We have about 450 students that show that they have aptitudes. So the way their brain is naturally wired to be good at things. And that's spatial, like 2 and 3D spatial awareness. That's their visual processing speed. That's their number reasoning. So if you're aware of science, you know there are brain games, they call them, that measure those different aptitudes. Aptitudes are not something you can study for. Aptitudes are the things that your brain is naturally wired to be good at. And all of us have a different profile of our strengths. So we are taking a look as a county and we're saying we have all this natural talent sitting in our high schools, but because of exposure, students may or may not report that they have interest to something. So what is it that we can do? If you look at the bottom of this table, you'll see that the career clusters that our students have a lot of exposure to, K-12, look at the interest numbers there. And this has been the same all 5 years that we've been using this tool. So we have a ton of students that say they're interested in teaching. We always have a ton of students that say they're interested in business, law and public safety. And if you think about what we do in schools, we do a lot of exposure to those career clusters all the way through. And then human services are those things, counselors and social workers and those human relationship things that students have a lot of exposure to also. So we have a whole bunch of students that have interest in those, but they may or may not have the aptitudes for that to be a very good match for them. So we've been collecting this information. We break it down by each of our school districts. And then as BAC, we use this information. We talk about this information. What does it mean to us? So what we have come up with over the years is that our new mantra in our region is, if you want to be it, you have to see it. We believe that we have all this natural talent, and our youth science data shows us we have all this natural talent, but students may not know what they want to do because they've never been exposed to it. So we adopted this mantra. We built this regional framework that you'll see on the right-hand side that has kind of 4 big buckets that are cyclical. And as schools and districts in our whole region, we are constantly looking at what kinds of things or what kinds of pieces do we add so that we have a very robust plan. How are we helping our students discover themselves? Youth science is one piece of that. We do a lot of other things in our region. How are we helping our students explore possibilities? What is it that we are planning to help them do that? How are we helping them develop their skills and experiences? And what things are we planning so they can connect with people and opportunities? So we rolled this out at the start of last school year, this framework. Does somebody have a question, Lisa? I'm sorry.
So far, no questions, but if anyone has one, please feel free to unmute at this time.
Okay. I thought I heard somebody break in and ask me something. So again, when I say we developed this regional framework, you will see at the top of our list, we've identified some model steps for our school districts where we say, here are some things that we need to attend to in that discover yourself category, all connected to youth science. And again, remember, we have 26 of our districts that are giving that tool at the high school level. We want to go beyond just giving the tool. And I will be very honest with you and tell you that for many years, that's what happened. All the students took it, and then there was very little follow through. And we recognized that there's so much in that youth science assessment that we needed to do more. And so in our model framework, We identified here's some key steps. These aren't the only things that you should be doing, but these are recommended pieces. And then for all of our districts, we came up with an action plan for them, and they can sit down in teams and they can decide who is doing each one of these steps, what grade does that happen, who's going to be accountable, how many students are going to be impacted. So again, we have districts on very different places. I don't want to mislead anyone and tell you that everyone is attending to every one of these things. They are not. We tell them pick the things you're able to do, and then we constantly try to get them to, okay, now what additional step can you continue to add into your district? So we're getting closer and closer to aligning with this regional framework. We use this idea in our region to guide our work. So we see youth science at the top, that all of our students in the high schools, we want all of our students to take that assessment and to be exposed to the tool. And then regionally, as a business advisory council, in order to increase exposure for our students, we've added things called teacher and student boot camps that I'll describe in a little more depth. Based on those student boot camps, we've also built in workforce fairs, regional and county level workforce fairs, as an attempt to build connections for our students. We're having our students then, based on those experiences, the ones that report that they've seen a business or they've seen a career cluster that is of interest to them, offering up through our career coaches and districts opportunities for job shadows and internships. And our hope is that we can have some students find good paying jobs. We are not trying to funnel, even though this looks like a funnel, we have no intention of having it serve as a funnel. We do not want to do that. We want our children to find out what they do like and what they are good at in high school and rule a lot of things out. So if they get out to a student boot camp and they realize that an industry cluster is not of interest to them, we want them to experience something else while they're still in high school, so
Andrea,
that they have an
before
opportunity.
Before
Sure.
we move
Yep.
on, there are a couple of questions in chat.
Okay, good. Yep.
One question is, are you willing to share these presentations, these slides, with this group?
Absolutely. Yep. I'll send them to you, Lisa, when we're done.
Perfect. And then the other question is, you talked about like having discussions about the data. In which classes are these schools typically reviewing the data with the students?
Yep.
Like how does that happen in the school setting?
Yep, that's a great question. So I'll go back here. So obviously our districts, we don't dictate anything to them. We make some recommendations. So they choose whether they want to give the tool in freshman year or sophomore year. Some of our school districts have career exploration classes that are required electives. They give the tool then. Some of our districts do not. So they tend to give the assessment in their ELA classes, because those are required for all freshmen and sophomores. If you're familiar with youth science, you know that aptitudes don't formally lock in for students until they're about age 14 or 15. So giving the youth science discovery before freshman year is premature, because your aptitudes can change. So we recommend that they pick, based on their building and based on their setup, what grade level, freshman or sophomore, does it make sense for your students to be taking this tool, and then think through. And we have what we call school summits, where we have our districts bring teams. They have a career connections team that they've identified at least 3 times a year to those school summits, and they continue to come back to this action plan, and they look at what they wrote down at the beginning of the year. What were their plans? They reevaluate in January. How are we doing? Where are we going for second semester? And then at the end of the year, we have them come back with us in May, and they look at this again and they say, how did we do? And what do we need to alter for the next year? Do we need to switch it up and give the assessment in a different class? Who's going to come back and look at this tool with our students? That same graph that I showed you about youth science, about how we have built the tool up over the years, that is a very similar looking graph to the number of districts that have added the position of a career coach. It used to be we only had 2 or 3 of our districts that had someone designated for that job. And now we are up to, I believe, 18 of our districts have a career coach. Not all of them are full-time in that role. Some of them have to teach a class or 2 during the day, or 3 or part-time, but there is somebody in addition to the high school counselor that's really taking a hold of this work. And I'm trying to move it forward. So I mentioned here that one of our pieces to increase exposure was we recognized that we need to get our educators knowledgeable and behind this work. Educators tend to know education because that's what we have done. So we went to school, we went to college, we came back to school. We can advise that path very, very easily. If we all want to be involved in the work of helping to advise for students, we need to have a bigger awareness. So back in 2019, our Business Advisory Council we started sponsoring teacher business boot camps, where we get teachers and we get them out into businesses in the summer, into the various in-demand industry sectors in our region. So they're getting exposed to the business, what the business does, but more importantly, what opportunities exist for students. What skills do these businesses, what are they looking for in students? What advancement opportunities are available for students? And our whole attempt there was really to just help change mindsets. We wanted to break down that stigma in our region that heading off to college right after high school is the only path. It is not the only path. There's a lot of different paths. We want our students to take the path that makes the best sense for them. And we want our educators to be very knowledgeable about all the paths so they can do a better job of helping our students find the one that makes the most sense. So we like to say we're gradually trying to build this army of career exploration ambassadors. And our teacher boot camps have helped us do that. We've had a total of 12 since 2019, and we've had about 240 teachers who have gone through that experience. During that experience, in addition to seeing businesses, they learn about youth science. So even if they're not the career coach, if they're the English teacher or the music teacher or the phys ed teacher, they are spending time with us learning what that youth science tool is and how it can be brought back up in every class, so that students are constantly coming back to that tool to see what the results say and using it. So that was one thing that we did as a Business Advisory Council. The other thing then, from looking at that data and talking about our data, our youth science data, last year we started what we call student business boot camps. And we piloted 5 last year. We had our school districts run reports from youth science and find students that showed aptitude for different career clusters. And we took those students out in one day and gave them exposure to businesses right here in our region aligned to those career clusters. So last year, the ones we piloted, we had 2 days that were devoted to computer and IT. So we took students out to healthcare, and all they saw in the healthcare setting was careers related to computer and IT. We took them to a manufacturing site, but on that visit, they only saw the jobs, or they were only exposed to the jobs that fell into the computer and IT space. And we took them to a more traditional computer and IT business that does a lot of security and wiring things. Same with engineering and advanced manufacturing. So in our student boot camp, we had our students visit 3 companies in one day. Our schools, the lift for them was get a chaperone, bus the students to us, and actually run the reports from youth science and invite students to this experience that show aptitude for the career cluster. We said, we don't want you to just make an announcement and say, who wants to come on this day? Because we know those strategies used to work, but we know they often miss a bunch of kids. So for our experiences that our Business Advisory Council plans, we say, you need to come back to Youth Science. You need to run Youth Science. You need to use that as your list and then invite students and tell them your Youth Science shows you may be interested, or this could be something you may be very good at. We'd like you just to get out and see. One thing that I wanted to mention, one of our chaperones in our very first student boot camp told me I was very surprised when I ran the Youth Science report, which students showed up that showed aptitudes for this career cluster. They would not have been the kids that would have first come to mind if I just used my own knowledge of the students. So that was very telling to us that running the reports is a critical piece. We give the students, when we do a student boot camp, we give them a survey when they first come to us in the morning, and we ask them a whole bunch of different questions. But one of the questions is, what is your familiarity with businesses in the region around that career cluster? What's your familiarity with the career cluster in general? How many opportunities do you think are in our county for that career cluster? So it's a quick QR code. They answer some questions on their phone in the morning. We have them do a post survey at the end of the day. And so this is just an example from one boot camp of how we were able to see an increase that students learned, became much more familiar with the career cluster, and showed a big difference in knowing what was available in their county just from that one day experience. What we learned from our student boot camps is last year when we piloted them, we got students and we put them on a bus. We took them to 3 different companies and they just heard a lot of stuff. And we realized that we didn't do a good job of making a connection or a hook in the morning. We weren't being our own good teachers. So we recognized we needed to start them out in the day, and we needed to do an opening activity that was hands-on, that exposed them to the concept of the career cluster and exposed them to a lot of the terms and the jargon and the things that folks in that industry were going to rattle off because that's second nature to them, that maybe our students weren't exposed to. So this year, we have already hosted 6 business boot camps in our region. And we start our day with an hour-long lesson with the students first. And we have our workforce readiness coordinator teaches that lesson, but we make sure it is something that is very hands-on, putting students into some groups, but exposing them to the major terms and information that will occur in that career cluster in order to prep them. Instead of asking our business folks to be hands-on, we needed to be hands-on with that and then get our students out into the company hearing about those different industries. So on this agenda, you'll see this was an advanced manufacturing day that we had in Sandusky County. After the orientation, we got our students, they went to Green Bay Packaging. And then they went to motion controls robotics. So we just do 2 sites in a day, and we ask one of our companies if they will provide lunch. We are able to take about 30 to 40 students on a boot camp day. So each of our districts gets anywhere between 6 to 8 to 10 seats, depending on the boot camp. And it all is about conference room space of our companies and what our companies say they can take for the number of students visiting. So here is a snippet for you of a post survey that we give the students that I mentioned on their student business boot camp. At the end of the day, we have them take this QR code. I took names off of students, but the types of questions that we ask them, and then we do ask them, would you be interested in a job shadow or an internship? And based on these responses, we have the students' names. We give this information back then to the school's career coach, and the career coach is lining up more involved job shadows, which are a full day experience in one company, or internship work-based learning opportunities for our students, based on, and I'll be honest and tell you, we do have students that respond no. And we're happy that they respond no, because then that's something they have ruled out for themselves and they can look at something else. So we see it as a win-win either way. We want them to learn and be exposed to a lot of things in high school. This kind of questionnaire also gives us some good information about what are some of the other things they're considering, because then as a career coach, we can look at that as well and see if we can help line up a job shadow for some of those other career fields, to get them exposure. So our next steps, when we started, we were not doing a lot in this space back in 2018. So we really targeted our efforts at the high school level, and we dug into youth science, and all of our energy has been at the high school. We recognize that's too late to start. And so we are continuing to focus energy at the high school, and we feel like our districts have a nice foundation happening there, but now we're starting to back into what are we doing in our region, at the middle school level, and then we'll back down to the elementary. Where are we planting those seeds? So youth science also has a tool called Snapshot. We have 12 of our districts that are using Snapshot this year. And what Snapshot does is it's an abbreviated version of the youth science tool. And it helps students align to those career clusters only. It doesn't do individual career matches, and it starts to lay the groundwork of those career clusters and exposure. So as a business advisory council, we can start analyzing our middle school level information. We have not done that yet, but we can start pulling that same data and then doing similar experiences where we're getting middle school students out just to see some things. So doing some of those boot camps just to start exposing them so that when they get to high school, they have a better handle on what direction they may want to go and can maybe move forward and get right into some job shadows and internships sooner. Or they can use that information to help their course selections and what path they want to go. So just some reminders of lessons that we have learned or things we try to be very mindful of. It is easy to just give you science and let it fall off the radar. We have to continually keep bringing it up, talking about it, having our career coaches talk about it, having our principals talk about it, reminding staff who is using this. How is it important? Why does it matter to us? Because there's a lot of assessments we have to give. We don't like to be just in compliance. We don't want to give something just to give it. We want to give it only if it's meaningful, and we believe youth science has a ton of potential. Our students have access to it for 10 years. So they can come back as long as someone remembers to have them switch from a school email address to a personal email address before they graduate. They can continue to come back and log in and use the tool to explore individual careers. So we constantly are reminding folks why it's important and what we believe. We're constantly trying to remind folks to run reports. Don't fall into the habit of just making announcements when these things come to be. Make sure you're using the tool, because we will miss the missing middle. There is a group of students that know they need to go to a 4-year college path because that's what their profession requires. There are a group of students who have already figured out they want to do vocational track or go right into the job market or enlist. But there's this whole lump of students that are really confused and lost right in the middle. And so it's our job to run reports and invite students and make sure students understand we're calling you to come to this opportunity because your results show this may be something you could be naturally good at. And then our last reminder is providing that ongoing support. reminding folks how to pull data, reminding folks how to, what their data looks like, how to run reports, who should do it, and highlighting best practices. We find our districts and we have a close pulse on who is doing what. And so we ask them, we call it our innovative practices. We ask them to share that out when we have these school summits with others, so that others can just latch on and say, all right, you've already done this. Tell me how you did it and what worked. And that's just an ongoing process for us. So those, I think, are important. It's not a one and done piece. Since 2018, we're constantly adding to, but then you have to continue to remind people the why. So that was a lot. I told you a lot in a short amount of time. So let me stop sharing. And I can answer any questions that anybody has.
Feel free to unmute and ask Andrea any questions. I have temporarily lost my chat. I do know there was one question in chat about your resources. You had something besides the slides. Becca, I think you had put that in chat. Could you maybe give her some background as to what you were looking for?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you showed the action steps document. I was wondering if you were able to share that with us as well.
I sure can. Yep, I can send both of those things to Lisa. And I showed you, Becca, the action step for discover yourself, that one bucket. We have paced out all of those other buckets as well. So the action
awesome.
step is pretty extensive, and not everyone is doing everything.
Right, of course.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Like most of our districts are doing some of that. And we always say, in an ideal world, everyone would be able to do everything, but we know we don't live in an ideal world. So our districts need to pick what is workable for them and focus on those things.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Okay, if we don't have questions, I'm kind of curious. I had some ideas. First of all, this is fantastic, Andrea. Thank you for sharing with us. But just some things that came to my mind as she was talking of other things that could come out of this, or connections I could make to it. So I'm wondering, for those of you on the call, one, if you're using UScience, how's it going in your district? And two, what new ideas might have came to you during her presentation? Anyone's free to share. You can unmute, put it in chat. I did get my chat back up, so that's a good thing.
Lisa, this is Ray. As a fellow Career Tech Planning District consultant, we're supporting our career centers, but I'm thinking about a lot of the districts that I've been engaging that do not have a career connections framework in place. And so as we're engaging that middle school piece, and we're getting ready to go into our CLNA season, we're talking about some of our QPR and some of the needs to promote and the existence of the pathways that we have. And this is how UScience could be a mechanism out of our CLNA as an action step to address some of the issues that we may be having with our associate districts. And that was just something that's floating in my mind as I was listening. And Andrea, thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah, that was great. Great connections there, Ray.
And I've had somebody ask me, like, how did we choose UScience? Again, we had 3 districts that were piloting, or they were using in 2018. They had just started. And I took a look at it. I took it myself. I had my high school kids at the time, my own students take it at the time, and the information that we could get was so valuable. There are other tools out there. So I am not going to lie to you and tell you UScience is the only thing. There are tools. I know as a leader, because I've been in education a long time, that sometimes you just have to find a thing and everybody's got to land on a thing and then you got to use that thing and stop bouncing to a million different ones. So we felt at the time that Youth Science did exactly what we needed it to do, and just continued to work with the folks that were using it and saying, how can you share successes? And that's how others grew. Somebody asked me about like Ohio Means Jobs and do we use Ohio Means Jobs? And we absolutely encourage our districts to teach students how to navigate Ohio Means Jobs, because we do know there are employers that use that. The piece for me that Ohio Means Jobs lacks is it only has an interest inventory. So it doesn't have anything with aptitude. So when our students do Ohio Means Jobs, they're answering questions based on their interests or things they've been exposed to, which may not be aligned to things that would naturally come easy to them and would fill them with this satisfaction because they're in a position or a vocation that matches with aptitudes. That's the sweet spot. When we can be in something that we're naturally wired to do and we're interested in, then we flourish. I took Youth Science myself and I was scared back in 2018 to take it because I thought, oh boy, what if it tells me I should have done something totally different with my life? And I was happy to find out that school administrator was in my top career matches. So it told me that obviously that's why I find joy every day coming to work, because I'm wired to be good at this work. And it's also of interest to me. So that's what we're looking for with all of our students in our region.
Thank you. Anyone else have ideas they want to share or questions that they might have? Well, one thing that came to my mind are a couple of things. One, all districts are required to have student success plans. What a fantastic use as like an intervention to put in place would be using that aptitude and interest to have discussions, like sincere discussions with the student, using that data to really re-engage them with why they're at school, or possibly to help them find classes that would connect to their aptitude and interest. Another same direction with that are when our special education intervention specialists are creating those transition plans. The aptitude and interest, looking at that together, could be an activity or a service that is provided, not just having the student take the assessment, but then debriefing after that and talking about opportunities that could exist for them based on their aptitudes and interest. So just really a fantastic presentation today, Andrea. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you for inviting me. I believe in this work, so I'm always happy to talk about it.
Right. So again, there's Andrea's email for you if you have questions in the future. I also think that this data, she talked about the targeted invitations based on aptitude to the student boot camps, which student boot camps, again, another fantastic idea. But maybe career techs could think of that same kind of targeted recruitment letters to students who show interest. Sending that letter and saying, we know that you have aptitude, ability in this field. We'd love to have you come take a look at our program. What a great way to use that as a recruitment tool to have those targeted letters sent out.
And Lisa, there is, to that point, Youth Science does have a report. It's called their CTE report. So school districts can run a report and they can filter out the programs that their area vocational school offers, and they can have a list of what matches based on students' aptitudes, and they can use that for their visitations if they want. Now, I will not tell you that all of our schools do that. They don't all do that, but it is available for them. We have 4 different CTE schools in our region, so our districts are all split. But some of our schools are covering the cost of the youth science assessment in our region using those middle school exploration dollars, or those dollars that they have for 7th and 8th grade. They're covering the cost of that. But there is a report. Youth science has 4 different reports that schools can run. One is the career clusters match. That's what I showed you. There's the CTE report. There's a top careers match report they can run. And then there is a report about college programming that they can run. So.
Well, again, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. You're welcome to stay with us for the rest of the meeting. Totally up to you.
Okay, thank you.
So at this time, since we have Andrea's presentation over, I always like to free up some time for you to bring any questions that you have about anything CTE to the group. Is there anything that anyone has had questions about or you want to share? Not necessarily youth science, could be anything related to career tech ed. Now is the opportunity to do that. And hearing none, I will move forward. So it's time to share. I have a few things that I have found with you since our last meeting. Just want to make sure that you were aware that they have added an additional CTE 26 application window. So this one will come out from July 1st through August 15th. I reached out to the department to get a little more clarification on that. It will only be for, they're going to, approve additional industry recognized credentials throughout the year. And so it will be for those credentials that get approved after March 1st. If you might want to add a new program or a senior year only program, maybe your partner districts might want to add that additional programming after that date based on new industry recognized credentials. That is what this window is for. So we're not opening up a separate window for anything and everything. That second window will only be in connection to any new industry recognized credential approved after the March 1st date. So there is a link to that here for you if you want to look up the information on that. That is included in the Google Slides that I had for you. I also wanted to share with you when we're talking about that career connections framework, maybe connecting careers to our students. I came across a new podcast. So Dan Heath is the author of Upstream. And if you've been in my coffee hours in the past, you know that I am a huge fan of Upstream. So he has a new podcast called What's It Like to Be? Again, it's new, so there aren't a lot here. But we've got a high school principal, a mystery novelist, a forensic accountant, TV meteorologist, criminal defense attorney, couples therapist, stadium beer vendor. So very unique and interesting occupations. This is worth sharing, I think, with your career tech teachers. Maybe if you have a teaching professions program, they would want to share the high school principal one with the students. Forensic accounting, that could either be if you have a law program or an accounting program, a business program. Meteorologist, you might have a broadcasting program. Again, lots of different things, just trying to find new ways, as she said earlier, to kind of hook the students. And I think there are some really interesting things in this podcast. I would keep an eye on it. Dan Heath does great work. So I believe this one is worthy of your time. I also have a video here. We're probably going to run out of time, so I'm going to skip sharing the video with you. It is about 4 minutes long. I just will say, if you have students who have ADD, ADHD, and maybe you might have practices happening in your building that maybe are roadblocks for students with disabilities, this video is very helpful to start to see what it's like to be that kid in terms of what happens in a school and how they perceive things, and maybe what they would want you to know as an educator about what they're experiencing. So 3 to 4 minutes. If we get time at the end, I'll come back to it. But I know that we are always running short on time, just like we are today. And then I came across this infographic. This was just a section of an infographic produced by Hanover Research, and it's about partnership engagement. And it made me think about our parents, and it also made me think about our business advisories or our career tech program advisories. So when we think about surveys that we have for maybe our parents, you know, and thinking about the design of surveys, one thing that stuck out to me was this questions here: are parents and caregivers aware of opportunities to get involved? And do they know where to go for different resources? That question in particular, do they know where to go for different resources? You know, there may be some families who need support with, what does it look like for my kid after? How do they find a job? So I'm just, you know, what are those resources that you should be sharing with families? What are things that you can do to help them get to that next step? You know, it's hardly ever an individual thing when we get a student to the next step. It's that networking, it's knowing where to go, what employment agencies are out there. Maybe your school has things that help. So just thinking about what are, like, you ask them for information, but what kind of supports are you giving to them, to the parents, to the families, to help them with their students' next steps? And the other one here was schedule your surveys to avoid conflicts in your district and ensure the intended audience will be able to respond, which made me think, okay, when is the best time to get, how do we get parents, like the good time? Well, if you have events in your building, you know, whether it's sporting events, parent teacher conferences, they're coming in for a school musical, you've kind of got a good audience that you could quickly throw up a QR code as they're waiting for something to start, right? So what are those events where you have families in your building that you could utilize that time to gather information from them, to offer them a quick survey of whatever it is you would like to get their input on? And on the right side here, we've got focus groups. And so, you know, one thing that stood out to me was this bottom one where it talks about incentives. And so I just wondered, you know, are you providing incentives? What might, how do you incentivize participation for your program advisory meetings? What benefit do the people who are coming to your meetings get out of attending? And are you making that clear to them, that connection to the benefit of participating with you? And then finally at the top, engagement improves even more when districts regularly collect data on family and community members' needs. So regularly collect data. One thing I heard Andrea talk about in the presentation that she gave was that she meets with her, let me see what she called it, school summit. She brings these schools together 3 times a year, right? So I know most of us have our business advisory program meetings twice a year. Is that enough? Would you consider that regular, right? So what is that regular collection of data? Should it be quarterly? Should it be 3 times a year? Should it be monthly? So those are all just things to think about as you are thinking about parent engagement, thinking about community business partner engagement. This infographic it is free. Hanover Education, just kind of go to their website and you can find the different free resources that they have. Moving on to upcoming training that is happening. Again, I shared this last month. The UDL training is starting December 19th is our first session. So if you have not registered a team and you would like to, you can use this top link to do so. I would encourage you. I have some districts that are sending either an administrator or just an intervention specialist. it really helps to have those lab teachers, or even, I had one district say, I'm more concerned about math in my building right now. Fine. Math is also on the Career Tech report card. Send a couple of math teachers. UDL is really an evidence-based practice for student success. So if in December 19th, I know that may be a struggle date since it is that last week before most of you go on break. Some of you may be on break, I'm hearing. But if you can't make that, but you'd still like your people to be involved, get them registered. Let me know they're going to miss December 19th, and we will look forward to seeing them on February 7th. Also, in our last coffee hour, I had shared this with you, but since our last meeting, they have shared their agenda, and I just wanted to share with you, I predicted there would be many AI sessions, and there are. So we've got leveraging AI in the school library, transforming math education, AI in the classroom, artificial intelligence in education. What do we need to know? So lots of opportunities here. It's early. I'm sure they'll still be adding a few more in, but there's really good sessions. AI-powered education, innovations in instruction and professional learning, AI and high-quality student data, a winning collaboration. So if that AI maybe piqued your interest or scared you a little bit, this might be a really good professional learning event for you to attend. Again, it's that Ohio Educational Technology Conference. I believe it is held in Columbus, but their links were all over here for registration, conference website, and then the agenda for you. Success Bound will be happening April 26th. That is through our tech prep partners. That is where last year I first met Andrea Smith and saw her presentation. So I know that Tech Prep does just a fantastic job at bringing in relevant and timely presenters to that Success Bound conference. And our next Career Tech Coffee Hour will be February 14th. We have elementary awareness about career education and recruitment. Becky Bin from Oregon will be doing that presentation. She had a really cool thing that she did last year, combining, there's a hat for that, which is one of Kevin Fleming's books for early childhood. And we will get to hear all about how that worked. That is a live link for registration, that February 14th link. April 2nd, Ray Blevins, who is with us today from Region 6, will be looking at CTE data and maybe some things that you could look at using that data-driven discussions for data-driven decisions. And then June 6th is our extended coffee hour in person from 9 to noon. I am looking for a location right now. Toledo Public had originally agreed that they would likely be a place for us. They're building or expanding onto their ag science and natural resources, but it will not be ready. So we will move them back to summer of 2025. If anyone has something they would like us to check out, a school you would like me to reach out to, or if you yourself have a really cool thing happening and you would like to host us, please let me know. Really could use some feedback on that part. I do also need feedback today. Please take your time. You can use the QR code here, or I can put this link in chat for you to give me some feedback on today's session. We are always looking for ways to improve and making sure that we are meeting your needs. So let me get that link in chat for you. All right, so either you have the QR code or the link is now in chat. Andrea is going to email me her slides. I will then email them out to you. If they are Google Slides, you know, I always send out the s'more within a week after this session. So if they're Google Slides, I will make sure to include them in that Google s'more. With that, I thank you for your time. I thank you for being here with me today. Have a great day and stay warm.